All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for the slightly later edition of the Daf Yomi. Apologies for being a little late, but our shiur for the week is still sponsored. Nevertheless, even if I arrive late, by Jeff and Chava Be'er Wald, Lili Nishmas Jeff's uncle, Mr. Heinrich Wald, Chaim Ben Shmuel's yahrzeit is tonight and tomorrow, the 24th of Tammuz. May his neshama and aliyah and all the entire wonderful spread of food that's here. Eli should have a neshama should have an aliyah and be zocha to amazing things in Shemayim based on all the zechuyos and the brachos that everybody's making, all the work we're doing. Okay. Debate Rabbi Yishmael. We had first mentioned yesterday, but we had to stop, of the first brisa, that the brisa was, we had a brisa number one that had suggested that we were dealing with a klal pratu klal when we were dealing with these caves. And therefore, when we were dealing with this types of water bodies that these insects or these water insects are growing in, right? So therefore, we're going to continue and pick up from there. In the Tana, that the Rabbi Yishmael Tana, a brisa of Yishmael had it slightly different. B'mayim shnei pamim. It says b'mayim twice in the pasuk. Ein ze klal prat. We don't agree that it's a klal prat. Rather, ela riba umiyat. It's a machlokas just about whether you consider, when you have a generalization and a specific, whether we call that a klal prat or a riboy umiyut. What's the difference? Klal prat means a generalization and then a specific, which is very severely limiting, only to those things that are most similar to it. Riboy umiyut means it's a generality, and then we're going to limit it. It's a limiter rather than a specific. And the difference is that I'm only going to limit one thing, not all things. So it's a limiter, has less power. As a limiter, it has less power to remove things than a miyut. Why would somebody decide it's a ribuy miyut versus a kal prat? The answer is that was their tradition in how you understand these psukim.
How would the ribuy miyut? Could we use the gas station example from last night?
Okay, so let's try and see if I can figure one out. Right?
That was a nice.
Good, right? So let's say a ribuy miyut. Right, in a ribuy miyut case, right? If I said to my son, I said, plain ribuy miyut would be, go to the gas station and get me some gas, right? 87. So when we had a klal prat, I meant only 87, right? When a ribuy miyut, if I said 87, I would mean I'm only telling you 87 because I don't want you to get something else.
You don't want diesel.
But it could be I don't want diesel. So therefore, a ribuy miyut has the same power of a klal prat of klal, basically. Okay. Then we said a klal prat to klal was when I said, get me gas, the diesel, get me gas 87. That's, and then I add a ribuy, right? Unleaded, right? Or whatever, that's my generality. I know I'm only eliminating diesel. If I had a ribuy miyut v'ribuy, then I would be eliminating one small thing. And what I'd be saying is, go to the gas station, get me 87, unleaded. I'd be coming to eliminate telling him not to go get a Slurpee from inside the store. Right? Because the diesel would be included in the gas, right? That wouldn't be the item to eliminate. I'm eliminating less. So as long as he doesn't go and get himself some Slurpee from the inside of the store, that would be my best interpretation of it, right? It's slightly not exactly, but the idea is that a ribuy miyut eliminates less than a klal prat to klal does. Okay? And in our case, that's what we're going to do right here. So ela ribuy miyut, how does it work? B'mayim, when it comes to the water, riba, that is the generality. B'yamim u'benechalim, in the seas and in the streams, that's the miyut. That is the limiter. B'mayim chazav riba, then it comes back and gives me the generality again. Riba miyut riba hakol, means that it comes to include everything. Every type of water is included in that, minus one thing. So that's how we're going to learn that. My Rabbi, what is included? Charitzin uni'itzin. It's going to be any type of ditches, trenches of water, cisterns, those lisura. My miyut, what is going to become excluded? Borosichin umaros lehetera. It's going to be only the pits, the ditches, and the caves that are going to be permitted. So Ema, so why don't I say my riba? What are we coming to include? We should be including even the borosichin umaros lisura. If it's a riba miyut, we should be including even the other types of water that are not possibly, because the ribuy miyut is more powerful, so it should include even more of these types of bodies of water. So my miyut, so what would be the only thing that would be excluded? Miyut kalim, the only thing would be the utensil. Well, the problem is, imkain tochlu maya hanilei. As we said yesterday, we can't do that because the pasuk says, that you shall eat, right? Pasuk says there's extra tochlu that you shall eat from the fins and ones that have fins and scales. It basically is it's an extra time. It's written a second time to tell me there's at least two things that we're coming to exclude. So therefore, it can't be just utensils. It's got to be utensils plus another category. So therefore, we're going to also exclude pits, cisterns, and caves. Okay, ve'epoch ana. So why, if you're going to exclude one thing and include one thing, why did you decide that you were going to include in the prohibition the trenches of water and those kinds of bodies of water and ponds, but you were going to exclude the caves and the pits? So the answer is Kedetani, because we learned like Matisya taught this drasha, and he explains as follows: Detani. We learned as follows: Matisya bar Yehuda. That Matisya bar Yehuda taught, Mara Isa l'Rabbos borosichin umaros. Why is it that if you're going to include either the cisterns and the pits and the caves, or you're going to include in the prohibition the trenches and the ponds, why did you pick the pits, cisterns, and caves, right? And say those are permissible, ulahotzi charitzin and itzin, and not the ponds and the trenches. Lisur, those are prohibited. So marbani borosichin marosh not surim kekelim. The answer is because the pits and the cisterns and the caves are still water, like utensils are. So therefore, that makes more sense, right? In the like from seas to rivers, we would go to ponds, trenches, and then we would go to pits, cisterns, caves, and then utensils, right? They are going to more still water. So therefore, motziani charitzin and itzin sheinat tzurin kekelim. They're not the same category. Okay. Hey, so now back in the original brisa that we had quoted yesterday, if you remember, we had mentioned that we said that this concept that you can eat these water bugs, right? We said it was clear from one pasuk, and it was sort of an inference from the other pasuk. They said we had two psukim that tell us that you have to have fins and scales on kosher fish, and one says you shall eat fish with fins and scales, and one says you shall not eat fish that don't have fins and scales.
You can't find any kosher water bugs anywhere?
Well, remember, we have to be careful when we say, we're just reminding everybody, because I was thinking a lot about the shrimp case and things, can we create a kosher shrimp farm based on this? And the answer would be no, because first of all, once you take the bug out of the water, it is no longer a water bug.
The creepy crawly, whatever it is.
Well, it's in the water, then it's a water bug, and then you can drink it in the water. So therefore, if you're drinking it together with the water that you're drinking, that's where you don't have to worry about it. If you're going to see that, if you scoop it out of the water, and now you have it by yourself, you take that, as soon as you pick that lobster out of the water, it is now no longer a creature. Now, also, it can't be put into the water. It has to have born there and grown up in there, and so therefore we're talking about little microscopic so you can't really grow. It wouldn't work that way.
What if you pick up the lobsters with water?
Right, so that would be the way we would do it, right? It would be with the water. But then the other thing is, it seems to be that it cannot be substantial enough, right? If you are going to be, it sounds like you're not liable if you're drinking the water, and along with the water that you're drinking, you have some of these little small creatures that are in it. But if you are specifically going for the creature, that's the ikr, then you can't get away with the fact that you made some lobster bisque or whatever they have, right? Right? You can't say, well, it's in the soup and I made the soup with it, right? You can't get away with that, right? Because you're eating it for the lobster. So now,
Nice try, though.
Right. So, hey sasum v'hei meforish. Which of the psukim is the one that is an inference, and which of the psukim is clear that you can eat these non-finned and scaled creatures? So, pligi baravach v'ravina. It's an argument between Ravach and Ravina. Chad amar yeshlo meforish. One says it's the mitzvahs aseh, the one that says when they have fins and scales, you can eat it. That's the one that's clear, because we'll see what it means in a moment. Ein lo sasum, and the one that says you shall not eat things that don't have fins and scales, that's the inference. scales. The Chadam, or the other, says no, ein lo meforish. When it says don't eat the things that don't have fins and scales, that's the clear pasuk that tells me I can eat these bugs that don't have. And yesh lo, and the pasuk that says that you must eat the ones with fins and scales, that's awesome. That is the inference. My time in demand de Amar yesh. Let's go into that in greater detail. That we said that. Let's make some sense out of it. What is the reason of the opinion that says yesh lo meforish, that the pasuk that says you must eat fish with fins and scales that are in certain body of water, that's the pasuk that's clear. So Amar lecha minehu deka mishtru kalim. The answer is that from there you can see that the fact it says that in the sea you must eat fish that have fins and scales, so it's clear that if it's not from the sea, you don't have to eat them with fins and scales, right? That makes a very clear, that's a clear derivation. Pasuk tells you, if you're eating it from the sea, you need fins and scales. Therefore, if I'm drinking water that's sitting in a bucket, then I don't have to worry about fins and scales. Okay? My time of demand damar einlo. What's the opinion according to the one that says, the pasuk that says, don't eat fish that don't have fins and scales? Because they say that's maforish. That's the clear pasuk. Why? Dehai hu de kamochach ahaich. De'imehaich havamina bekelim avagav deisle nami lo telchel. What we're saying is that the pasuk, the second pasuk, is explaining it because it says, if from the first pasuk, I would have thought that the first pasuk says with fins and scales, you have to eat the ones with fins and scales from the sea. So I would have thought, okay, that means even if it has fins and scales, I couldn't eat it in the utensil, like we had discussed before. How do I know that I can eat it? The answer is from the second pasuk. The second pasuk tells me if it doesn't have it, then you can't eat it. But why am I listing that a second time? To tell me that it is, I can eat if they don't come from the sea. Okay, so therefore it's really the second pasuk that's the critical pasuk. Amar Rav Huna says, Lo lishbe inish shichra b'tzivyasa be'urta. A person shouldn't filter his beer at night. The way they used to filter their beer is they would take chips of wood, and they would take you'd have your beer has lots of extra froth on it, and you want to filter it out. So they would pour it over the chips of wood, and the beer would run between the chips of the wood, and then you'd get at the end, it would basically just be the liquid that would come through on the other side, right? And it would, any larger particles or froth or whatever would stay on the chips of wood. But don't do that at night. Why? Because Dilma Parish Le'el Mitziv Yosef Ahadar Nafil Lekasa. You might wind up having one of these little water bugs in the beer, and then when you pour it out onto the wood, then it is now separated from the water, and now it's not kosher. You can't eat it once it comes out of the water.
Did you say pleading the ale?
Did I? No, maybe you're thinking, le'el, parish le'el, right? From the el, right? It's parish, it separates from the el. So then you are in violation because a sheretz hashoretz al now it's a land creature, right? This creepy crawly now is on the piece of wood, and then it's at nighttime, you won't see it, and it'll fall back into the beer, and then you'll drink it, and now it's not allowed. Okay, so that's very interesting about this creature. It's in the water. When it's in the water, it's prohibited. As soon as you pull it out of the water, it becomes prohibited. And then even if you put it back in the water, it stays prohibited. Okay, so that's interesting. Ihachi. If that's true, so then b'mananami. So you shouldn't drink your beer in a glass at night either. Why? Because Dilma Parish L'Dafna Dimana V'Hadar Nafa Lamana. I take my drink and I take a sip and then I straighten it out and I get some of the liquid on the side of the container. Maybe the bug is now stuck to the side of the container, separated from the water. And then when I drink again, it'll wash down. And now when it's separated from the water, it's not kosher. And now when I drink some more, then I will wash it down. And now I'm drinking not kosher. So therefore, it shouldn't forget the sifting, not sifting, it's filtering, right? Forget the filtering, even just drinking in a cup could be a problem. So the answer is, Hasam hainu revise. No, that's like the natural order of the way that drinking takes place. So that doesn't count. That's not going to be a problem. So don't worry about that. Umina temra How do I know to make such a distinction? Tanya, we learn in a brayso. How do I know that when it comes to pits, cisterns, and caves, I can bend down and I can drink directly from them? Ve'eno nimna, and you don't have to worry about the worms or bugs that are in the water. Talmud Lomar, the pasuk says, Tochlu mikol asher b'mayim. You can eat from anything that is in that water, as we had said. V'leichush dilma parish ledafna v'hadar nafil. Well, maybe you should worry that there was a worm that crawled up the side of the well a little bit and then fell back in, and now you're drinking, and that should be a problem. Ella hainu rivise, hachanam hainu rivise. Rather, that is the normal way that they operate, and therefore you don't have to worry about that. As long as it's normal behavior there, then that's not the same thing, and you don't have to worry about it. Amar le Rav Chisda Rav Huna. Rav Chisda Rav Huna. Tanya de Misayelach. I have a brisa that supports what you're saying as well. Kol hasheretz asheretz alaretz. Pasuk says in Vayikra. Thank you. That you're not supposed to eat any of the crawly creatures that are on the ground. L'rabos yavchushin. That also comes to that you're not allowed to eat. That also comes to include the yavchushin, which is a type of gnat, which is a little thin gnat that you find in vinegar. So sinanon, that right. So if you filter it, right, so then it becomes prohibited. So taima disinanon, right. The reason why it becomes a problem is because you filtered it. Halo sinanon shari. If you didn't filter it, it would be fine. Right, it wouldn't be an issue, even though it's could be that it climbed onto the wall of the utensil or whatever it is. That you don't have to worry about. Amar Shmuel says, Kishus shehislia beibeha. A kishus that it's a cucumber, right? The cucumber that becomes wormy. Oh, so this is what we had discussed. We had mentioned this before, right? We had the wormy cucumber. So we said that if the bug was born inside the cucumber, right, and the cucumber was attached to the ground, then the worm in the cucumber is prohibited. Why? Because then it's a creepy crawly on the ground, because the cucumber is still attached to the plant and the plant is in the ground, so therefore it is a bug in the ground. However, if my cucumber has already been picked and now a bug develops in it, and hatches in it, now it is not a creepy crawly on the ground, and it's not a prohibition to eat it.
But you have to do a shmata on it then.
Huh?
You might have to do a shmata on the cucumber then.
Well, we don't have to, if again, because this is not going to be a non-kosher, we're not going to say it's a non-kosher bug. That's the point, okay? So, now,
So I had once like these, peas in the pod.
Yes.
You opened up the pod and there was a caterpillar.
Yes.
This caterpillar living inside of there.
Yeah.
So after that's picked,
it
grew inside of the.
So if it was, right, if the caterpillar, the problem is now you don't know whether you can eat it or not, because if that caterpillar was there when it was on the plant, it's prohibited.
How else would it get inside though?
It could have been picked and then another bug came and laid its eggs in it after it was already picked. So that's why we said if you had opened your pea 12 months after it had been picked, we had learned in the Gemara over there, then it's fine, because you know that the bug wouldn't have lived there for 12 months.
Rabbi, because I know some of the peas, right? And the shell has a hole, right? And the bug could go through the hole in the shell.
So now, if the bug came through the hole, that would be a problem, because then the bug is coming from the outside. Then it is a crawly on the ground, right? It's got to be born inside of the.
So I didn't eat
the pea. I wouldn't eat it.
But it could potentially not be a kashrus problem.
Potentially, right. Now, keep in mind that there is another issue of Baal Tashachzu, which is a prohibition of eating anything gross and disgusting, right? If you have anything that's gross and disgusting, you can't eat it, so that's a separate potential problem, right?
Yeah, nice try.
So
Yeah.
So that's a good question. I'm not 100% sure of the. I was thinking that when I was heard about Baal Tashachzu, according to who? If I am, if I'm eating monkey brains, right, that sounds disgusting to me, right? But maybe somebody else considers it a great delicacy, correct?
Like
Cow tongue, for example, exactly, right?
Pickle tongue, best.
I know, and I've had it, and as long as I didn't know what it was fine.
You've had man brain before?
Yes, it is right. Yes. Sorry.
You've had man brain before?
I've had membrane.
No, tongue. You talking about tongue?
No, tongue. Then we call that sweetbread, right? The sweetbreads is what they call the brains, right?
No, the brain is sweet bread. Yeah.
Correct. Okay. Anyway, so if this worm is in this cucumber while it's still attached to the ground, asura, then it is a prohibited worm, right? Mishum, why? Because the pasuk says sheretz al-sheretz al-aretz. It's a crawly creature on the ground. So now, therefore, this supports what we had said that if it. Right. Okay. So now we said that. So lema misayele. So let's say this halacha supports that which Shmuel said. The Tani Chada, we learn it in one brisa that says, Al ha'aretz, any of the shrotzim that crawl on the ground, so therefore that means if they crawl on the ground, then it's prohibited. Lahotzi es hazizin sheba adashim. So that means that these sort of bugs that are found in lentils, they're not a problem, right? Because they grow inside of the lentils and they're inside the lentils. Ves hayatushim shebiklesim. And also these other type of bugs that are growing inside of these beans. V'tolas shebitzmarim, and the worms that grow in dates. V'shebigrogeres, or in figs. A lot of worms and dates and figs, right? So those will be permitted. Why? Because they're not creepy crawly creatures on the ground, right? They develop and can hatch inside of the figs and things after they've already been harvested. V'tanya idach, then we have another brisa that says, Kol hasheretz hasheretz al-aretz, any of the creepy crawly creatures on the ground, l'rabos tolas shebi'ikre zaysim v'shebi'ikre gefanim. So now this comes to tell me, according to this brisa, that worms that are on the roots of the olives and on the roots of the grapes, they are prohibited. So what's the difference? Why is it that the worms that are on these figs and dates are not a problem, but the worms that are on olives and grapes are? So my lav idi ve'idi bepera. Are we not saying that we're talking about both cases? The worms are on the fruit. Veha bi'ibeha, veha shelo bi'ibeha. The difference is, one is when the fruit is attached to the ground, and one was when the fruit has already been picked. That explains how we can have both of these things true at the same time. So that would prove the halacha that we just mentioned. However, that's not necessarily the conclusion, because idi ve'idi bibeha, both of these could be talking about a circumstance where they've already been picked. Velokash, it's not a contradiction. Ha bepera, ha be'ilana gufa. One is talking about when there's a problem in the fruit, and that's where it's permissible. That could be in the fruit. One is talking about where the worms are in the tree itself. Right, so therefore, if the tree itself becomes wormy, daikanami, you could even see that because dekatani, because it says tolasha beikari zaysim. We're talking about the worms that are in the tree of the olive tree, b'shikari gefanim. So those worms are not able to be eaten because they are in the ground. Shma mino. Okay, so that's a distinction. So therefore, those brises don't prove our point, but it still doesn't necessarily mean the point is not correct. Boi Rav Yosef asked the following question: Persha umesa. Let's say the worm comes out, sticks itself out of the fruit, and then it dies. So mahu, what do we say about that? It didn't crawl on the ground, so maybe it's not asur. Or do we say, we don't need it have to be on the ground, but maybe because it comes out and dies, it could have come out on the ground. I guess that's what's going on. So therefore, it's not in the fruit. Once it comes out of the fruit, it's as though it can be on the ground, and so therefore it is prohibited. Miktsasa mahu. What if part of the worm comes out? Not the whole thing. Le'avira ola mahu. What if it doesn't get to the ground, right? Let's say the worm falls out of the fruit and it gets eaten on the way. It doesn't hit the ground yet. What about that case? So teku. So that's the bottom line. We don't know quite what to do with those circumstances. Not on the ground yet. In other words, at what point is it considered a crawly creature on the ground? When it leaves the fruit or when it gets to the ground? So exactly where the defined line is not clear. Boy Ravashi asked the question. Legag tamara mahu. What if let's say the worm gets from the seed to the outside of the fruit. So I guess the worms are starting from the pit and they're born in there and then they get to the outside. So what about that circumstance? What about legag gar inasa? What if it only gets to the surface of the pit, starts on the inside of the pit, works its way out to the surface of the pit? Mitmaro litmara mo. What if it goes from one date to the next date? It doesn't go to the ground. It stays from date, but it goes from one date to another date. What about those circumstances? Teku, again, the definition of when it's leaving the fruit and when it just, I would say it's teku. Again, we don't know the answer to that, but don't eat it. Amar Rav Sheshes, braid Rav Idi, Rav Sheshes, the son of Rav Idi, said, kukyane. These are the worms that are in the lungs of animals. So asire, those worms are prohibited to be eaten. Right? My time of why? Those are not worms that got born inside of the lungs. They came from the world and got inhaled by the animal. They came into the animal, and that's where they come from. They come from outside. So therefore, they're creepy, crawly creatures before they got into the animal. So Maskif Rashi, Rashi says, if they came from outside, lishtaklu derech beis harei, then why wouldn't they be in the digestive tract? Right? Because the animal would have eaten them, and they would be in the digestive tract. They wouldn't be in the lungs. So, Iked Amri Amarav, Shisha Braid Rav Idi, Kukyan. So some say that the answer was that Rav Shisha, the son of Rav Idi, said, Kukyanai Sharu, the Kukyanai are in fact permissible. And my time, why is that? Because Mine Gavli, because they are born inside of the animal. And so therefore they're, either spontaneously generated in the animal or whatever they thought that was there. They said it did come from the animal. And Amar Rav Ashi, Rav says, Pshita, it is obvious, because if they came from outside, lishaklu derech beis harei, you would find them in the intestines. You wouldn't find them in the lungs. V'hilchasa, but the halacha is kokyani asiri. These worms from in the lungs are prohibited. My time of why? Meinam nayim ba'ilile beusiyeh, because we think that what happens is they get snorted and sucked in through the nose. And therefore they're getting into the airway, and that's why they get to the lungs, and that's why they're problematic. Okay, next, toloim darne. We have worms that are sometimes found between the skin and the meat. When you open up to remove the flesh of the animal, you can sometimes find worms there. Debisra, the ones that are found in the meat of the animal, asiri, those are all prohibited. Dekavre sharyon, but the ones that are found in a fish, those are okay, right? We'll explain what's the difference. Amarli Ravina la ime. So Ravina said to his mother, Iv avlali vana echol. I really not fond of fish worms. So therefore, if you will mash it up for me, I'll eat it, right? It's like making gefilte fish, because I just don't want to see the worms. So it's gross. So if he tells his mom, just make it to a dish or something, like put some sauce on it or something. I don't want to see it. Okay, so
Gross, then can you eat it?
so apparently he couldn't eat it when it was gross, right? So he told his mom to make it so it's not gross, right? He had to mentally not picture it anymore, right? That's like me with cow tongue, right? I couldn't, if you serve the whole cow tongue, I couldn't, but if you slice it into slices, then that looks much better. Amar le Rav Misharshi, so Amarle Rav Misharshia braid Rav Acha Ravina. So Rav Misharshia, his son, said to Rav Acha, the son of Rav Acha said to Ravina, Maishna mehodatanya. What is the difference between the fish, the worms of the fish, which we said are prohibited, because it says in the Brisa, Ve'es tishaketsu l'rabos es hadronim shebehema. Because the pasuk says that these are the things that they should be shekets. They should be shekets to you. They should be like shkotzim, like bugs to you. From their flesh you shall not eat. And it says ve'es nivlasam tishaketsu. So that is coming to, and their flesh you shall, or their nevela, their corpses shall be a shekets to you. So that comes to include those other worms that live in an animal. So, but not, there's also prohibited to eat, but not the ones that are in fish. Amar le hachi hashta. 1 second, what's going on? Behema b'shchita hu de mishtaria. Let's take a look. Animals become permitted to eat when you do shchita on them. The honey, now these worms, right, that are growing inside the animal, so mideloka mahanya lehu shchita, since shchita of the animal is not, they're inside the animal, but shchita, they're not considered separate creatures. So they're considered to be separate creatures. So when you would think, oh, I slaughtered the animal, so therefore everything inside the animal should become permitted, including the worms, that's not the case. Be'isuraihu kaimon. They are going to stay in their iser. Aval dogim, but fish, ba'asifa b'yam mishtari. Fish don't need a shchita. Therefore, v'hani ki kagavlon behetera kagavlon. These worms also, they don't need a shchita, and so therefore there's no. Since the fish don't need a shchita and they don't need a shchita, so then the worms can get subsumed by the category of the fish. Tana Rabbanan, our rabbis learned. Holech al gachon. So it says there's a the crawly creatures that slither on their stomach. So that's zen nachash. Right, that's a snake that slithers on its stomach. Then it says kol, everything that slithers on its stomach, l'rabas hashilshul, to include a worm. So es hadome l'shilshul ve'hadome, anything that's similar to a worm. Al arba, something that crawls on its four legs. Ze'akrav, that's going to include the scorpion. V'kol holech, and everything that goes l'rabas es ha-chipushis. That is also going to include the chipushis. I'm not sure what the chipushis is. So it's translated where the chipushis is. Ladybugs.
Yeah.
Okay.
In modern Hebrew, I don't know.
Beetle.
Beetles, ladybugs. Okay, so there you go.
Family.
There you go. And also as a domelachipushes, and anything that's similar to that. And then it says mar beraglayim, anything that has many legs, zen nadal, that'll be the centipede.
Or spider.
Not the spider, because the spider is a arachnid. I guess it's not necessarily in the same kind of, maybe, but this says that. Ad kol l'rabos es adome, and anything that has ad kol also is going to include anything which is similar to it. Ve'es hadome ledome, and anything that is similar to that which is similar is also prohibited. Basically, any of the bugs that crawl on the ground are all going to be prohibited to eat. Tanya, we learn in a brisa. Rabbi Yossi ben Durmaskis Omer. Rabbi Yossi, the son of Durmaskis, said, Livyasan dag toharu. You know the Livyasan? It's kosher. In case you were worried that the Livyasan, when we get to Shemayim and Hashem feeds the tzaddikim from the meat of the Livyasan, you should just know that it's a kosher fish. We've never seen one, so it's hard to be able to know it has fins and scales.
When you go to Leviathan, think about that.
That is kosher. Shenamar, as the pasuk says in Eov, that it is gava afiki maginim, that the top is afike maginim. I guess it's covered, it's closed up with plates or whatever it is. And tachtav chadude cheres, and underneath it's sharpened with shield or whatever. So that basically fins and scales. That sounds like a description of fins and scales on this Leviathan. So afiki maginim elu kaskalshim shabo. Afiki maginim refers to its scales. Tachtav chadude cheres. Elu snapirin, that refers to the fins. Sheporech behem, that it swims with them. Hadron alach elu trefos. Hadron alach elu trefos. Hadron alach elu trefos. Okay.
Oh yeah, beautiful. Beautiful.
Okay. On to the next.
How many volumes is Chulin?
Four.
So we caught up with Daily Daf now?
Today is Samach Tes. So we're on Samach Tes. Tomorrow will be Ayin. I believe we will be on Ayin tomorrow, and we will be caught up. Here's Hashem. We'll do a little bit more of today. We'll do a little bit more of Samach Tes, and keep on going. Drop me. Yes. Understood. Okay.
He made a world announcement.
Okay. Ready?
Recording.
Mishnah. New Mishnah. New Perek. New topic. We've gone through the insides of the animal. We've gone through the birds. We've gone through the grasshoppers. Now let's talk about shchita a little bit more again. Behema hamaksha leiled. You've got an animal, it's pregnant, and it's having difficulty during childbirth. Now, because the animal is having difficulty during childbirth, it's misukenes, which we've discussed before, it's in danger. And so we said that if you shecht a misukenes, right, because you're worried the animal's going to die, it's kosher. So now you got to make your choice right now. Am I going to slaughter this animal right now? Because at least it won't be a treif. I won't have to feed it to my dog. I can eat it myself. Do you leave it what's going to be? Fine. So now he's got this. So now the animal's having trouble giving birth. Hotzi ha'ubar es yado. The animal that's inside the mother sticks a leg out. The leg sticks out. Hechzira, and then pulls it back in. So now Then you realize this animal's not giving birth, so you shech the cow. Mutter ba'achila. When you shech the cow, you can eat the fetus that's inside, because the fetus is part of the mother, and when you shech the cow, it's like you shechted. The fetus is either question amongst the Rishonim whether it means that the fetus is shechted or whether the fetus doesn't need shechita.
But if there's anything wrong with it,
Wasn't there a thing that you can make a breed of? You know that you can make a breed of cows that are always kosher no matter what you do.
Because what you will wind up is this cow. This cow. That's called a ben. This is a ben katua. We're going to wind up having a ben pakua. Sorry, that you're going to wind up being in a circumstance where this cow does not need shechita.
But if there's something wrong with the fetus, could that be like a treifa? Or something?
No, because it's not a treifa unless it's its own animal. Right now, even if the fetus has a disqualifying characteristic to it, it doesn't matter because it's kosher by shechting the mother.
Well, the mother was a treifa, but
then the fetus is a treifa.
But the fetus stuck out its leg, so it's somewhat born.
So we're going to discuss what happens. Well, it does. So again, what we just learned here is sticking out its leg doesn't make it born. Right? So therefore, since it sticks out its leg, it's not born, and therefore the fetus is still considered to be kosher by shechting the mother. However, hotzias rosho, if it sticks out its head, so then, afal pi shech zero, even if it goes back inside, harei zeh kiyoled, it's like it's already born. Because now the head is a significant part of the body. Once the head is born, the calf is born, even if it goes back in, and you do shrita, and that's not going to help you. Okay, the cow is in trouble, and you realize that you're doing your best, that you're going to try to save this cow. So what do is you decide that it's having trouble during childbirth, so you're going to decide that you are going to abort the fetus. So what you're going to do is you are going to cut the fetus up inside the mother so that you can pull it out in pieces and not have the cow die. Right, so that's your intent here. Okay, so chotech meubar shebe. He's not just like being vicious, right? He's decided that now this calf is not getting born. So he reaches in and he cuts the fetus up inside the mother, and the fetus is but it doesn't help, and he ends up shechting the mother anyway. Mutter ba'achila. Those cut up pieces are permitted to eat. Because
the calf or from the mother?
Both, right? The mother just got shechted, and so the pieces of fetus are inside the mother, so therefore they are also still kosher. That answers your question about whether if the offspring was a treifa, because that basically this is a dead offspring. It doesn't matter; it's part of the mother, and therefore it's mutter. Mina tcholu mina kloyos. Let's say the person is doing surgery on this cow, right? And he cuts the spleen out or the kidneys out. Now, those are things that if the cow is missing those things, that doesn't make it a treifa. But those organs are still inside the animal. He separates them, he cuts them, but they're still inside the animal, and he does shchita to the animal, aser ba'achila. Those, when you shach, you can't say, oh, well, the kidney's inside the animal, therefore it is it's a part of the animal, and therefore I do shechita, I can still eat that kidney. I cannot. Right? We'll see what the difference is. Ze'aklau. Here's the rule. Davar she gufa aser. If it's part of the mother's body that's now inside the mother's body still, that is not going to be okay with the shechita. She'ena gufa, but the fetus, which is not part of the mother's body, mutter is okay with the shechita. Ironically, becomes permitted through the shechita of the mother animal. Okay? Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda says, Amar Rav. Ve'ever atzmo aser. That which we said at the first part of our Mishnah, the baby cow sticks a leg out and then pulls it back in. We said the Mishnah says, mutter, you can eat it. When we say we can eat it, what do we mean? We can eat the calf. But that leg that got stuck out, that leg we can't. That leg is born.
But you have to amputate the leg before you eat it.
That's correct. You amputate that leg before you eat it. My time, what's the reason? Because the pasuk says, "Ubaser besadet treifa lo sochelu." Meat that is in the field. We're actually interpreting this pasuk very interestingly. The basic way for the understanding the pasuk is that meat that dies, that's a treifa in the field, you shall not eat. The way that we're reading the pasuk is meat that is outside in the field is treifa, and you shall not eat it. So this pasuk is telling me anything which leaves the boundaries of the place that it's supposed to be automatically becomes a treifa, and I can't eat it. So in this circumstance, since the calf's leg sticks out, that calf's leg becomes treifa, and I can't eat it. This same pasuk also is the source for why, if I take a piece of meat outside of the azara, that's a korban, kache kachim, I can't eat it from the same thing because it's outside of its regular place. Or if I take kache kalim, piece of a korban shlomim, and I take it outside of Yerushalayim, I can no longer eat it. It becomes a treifa. Because if it goes out of its regular place, even if it goes back in, it is prohibited. Right? So Tnan, we learn in the Mishnah. Mishnah says, Behema hamakshir leleid v'hotzi ha'ubar es yodo v'echzira muter b'achila. Our Mishnah says that a behema that is having trouble giving birth and the calf sticks a leg out and then brings it back in, it is permissible to eat. My lava aver. I mean, why don't you understand that means that the leg is permissible to eat? Right? All it says is it is permissible to eat. What is it? You say it means the calf. Maybe it means the leg. Lo, ubar means the calf. Ia ubar, if it means the calf, my irya hechzira, then why does it have to stick the leg back in? Right? Afilu lo hechzira nami. The calf sticks its leg out, you shech the animal. So obviously the leg that's sticking out is outside the calf. That's not going to help you with the shechita, you can't eat that. But the rest of the calf you can eat. So therefore, if you're telling me that this Mishnah is telling me that I can eat the rest of the calf, then why does the Mishnah tell me it has to stick its leg back in? Even if it doesn't stick its leg back in, I can still eat the rest of the calf. Must be that we're saying that if it sticks its leg back in, I can even eat the leg. If it leaves it out, I can't eat the leg. Now that's why it would make a difference. So no. Huadin afal gav de lo echzira. No, you're right. That is what you're saying is true. Even if the calf, even if he doesn't bring the leg back in, there's no difference halachically. Meaning, if it sticks his leg out and brings it back in, or if it sticks his leg out and does not bring it back in, either way the calf is permitted and the leg is not. I did a kaboy lemisna. So why does the Mishnah talk about a case where it stuck its leg out and brought it back in? Is because it's only trying to balance. Sometimes Mishnayos do this. They bring two cases, and in order to make the two cases similar, it provides an unnecessary detail in one of the cases to balance it, where that detail becomes very relevant in the next case. And it becomes very relevant in part 2 of the Mishnah, the Seifa. Hotzi es rosho afal pishech ziro hareze kiyolud. If the calf sticks its head out, even if it brings it back in, it's considered born already and you can't eat it. Now that becomes important because we would have already understood if it sticks its head out and doesn't go back in, obviously it's born. We're now saying that even though it sticks its head back in, it's still not born. So therefore, since the detail of going back in is relevant in that case, it also taught us the case of the leg and saying that's relevant if it sticks its leg back out and brings it back in. Tana nami. Therefore, we also are going to teach the same case, Reisha v'echzira. Therefore, the case of the beginning is where it brings its leg back in, even though it's not really relevant. It doesn't matter whether it brings its leg back in. You can't eat the leg and you can't eat the calf. V'seifa my kamashmoan. Okay, fine. Then what is the purpose of, what is it telling us about the head being born? What is that telling us that it is, that's important? Tekeva de yotza rosha havyalei leda. The answer is because you're telling us once the head comes out, the animal's born. Okay, that's nice information. That's great, except we already know that. Because from other Mishnayos. Tanina, in Meseches Bechoros, we learn, Eze Bechor Lenachla ve'eno Bechor Lekohanim. There's two different categories or definitions of a firstborn. We can have a firstborn as far as inheritance is concerned, and then we can have a firstborn as far as Pidyon Haben is concerned. And they don't need to necessarily be the same. Okay, so that Mishnah in Bechoros says, what is a circumstance where a firstborn, we have a couple of you guys here, that firstborn children are getting a double portion, but you wouldn't get a Pidyon Haben. So let's take, for example, Haba Acher.
And then Pidyon Haben is only when it comes to Yisraelim, no?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And Haba Acher Nefolim. What if the first child that comes out is a stillborn? Okay, so if the first child comes out, that means that the child is born dead, right? So the fetus, right? The fetus, correct. So now, in that circumstance, right, the next child that's born is still a bechor for inheritance. Why? Because the pasuk says, "Rashis oh no." the firstborn child that is that a father would care deeply about gets to know, and that has to be a living child. Whereas for the purposes of Pidyon Haben, it's Petarechem. It's the first child that comes out of the womb. And this child, even if it's stillborn, is the one that comes out of the womb first. The second one is not. So therefore, we can have a circumstance where you have a child that is not the firstborn as far as Pidyon Haben, but is a firstborn as far as getting double portion as a Bechor.
Preferred, even if both of them are alive, because he's preferred by the father.
No. It's automatic if the child is alive, that's the one the father, right, that's considered to be the one the father's attached to.
So if the
Correct. But if the first one comes out deceased, then the father doesn't have the attachment to that one as much as the living child.
If the child is born, stillborn,
Yes.
does the next child after that become the firstborn?
As far as getting double portion, not as far as Pidyon Haben. Okay? So, Af al pi sheyotza rosho chai, and now that is the case, even if the stillborn child is born, when its head comes out initially, it's alive. Right? O ben tisha, or it's 9 months, it's a 9-month baby, it's a baby that came to full term, and yotza rosho mace, and it comes out stillborn. In either of those circumstances, right? In either of those circumstances, that's not going to be a firstborn as far as inheritance. That will be a circumstance, right? That second child is going to be firstborn for inheritance, but not firstborn for Pidyon Haben. So now, Tamo, the reason is de rosho mace. That when the reason why the second child is considered to be the firstborn as far as the inheritance is concerned is because the first child that came out was deceased when it came out. So ha rosho chai. However, if the circumstance was that it was a full-term baby and the head came out alive, haba acharav bechor lenach lenami lo havi, then that would be born. That would be considered a live birth. And that would mean that the second child that comes out isn't even going to get a double portion. Because the first child, if it's full term, and the head comes out and it's alive, even if it subsequently goes back in and dies, that's still a live birth. So therefore, from that Mishnah, we can determine and understand that head coming out means live birth. Therefore, why does our Mishnah have to tell me that a head coming out means a live birth? Maybe you'll answer me. I'll tell you why. Because there's a difference between animals and people, right? I wouldn't know. I understand that Mishnah is talking about people. This Mishnah is talking about animals. Maybe by people, a head being born is a live birth, but by an animal, a head is irrelevant. Why? Because de'ein prosdor lebehema.
When the baby is born, right? When the nurse pulled the baby, it's taking it from the head.
Sorry?
You know when the baby's being born, right? It's coming out. The doctors are holding the baby by its head first before the legs, usually.
Usually, yeah.
Except for Yaakov.
Well, Yaakov held Esav's ankle. We also have circumstances where other limbs can come out first, right? Peretz, for example, famously stuck his hand out first, and then they tied a ribbon around his arm to be able to tell which one was the firstborn, right? Even though, is he really the firstborn because only his arm came out? But in any event, that's the story in the Torah about that. Anyway, but the point that we're making here is maybe an animal is different than a human being. Why? De'ein prosdor lebehema, because the birthing channel is differently shaped by a human being than it is by an animal, and therefore potentially the fact that a head is present at birth may be right. That is right. So when a head comes out from a cow, it is more clearly born, because its hips are wider and therefore it's more out of and delivered, whereas by a human child, maybe a head coming out wouldn't be born. And so therefore I can sort of see, biologically speaking, how a head could be born by an animal but not born by a human. So behema me odom lo yalfa dechashiv pirtzav panim didei, and also the other way around, and that is that maybe I would presume that a birth by an animal might not be significant because human beings' faces are important. Animals' faces are not that important. A human being's face has some kind of kedusha to it, has something special to being a person's face.
Actually, monkeys are very close to humans, though.
But they are not humans,
Right.
right? Nevertheless, and so therefore potentially there's reason to believe that a cow's head would be a birth where a human's would not, and there's reason to believe that a human's birth would be a birth by a head where a cow's would not. So therefore, I need both mishnayos: one to tell me that is the halacha by humans, and one to tell me that is the halacha by animals. So, okay, well then, Hanami Tanina, we still already learned it in a Mishnah that by an animal, a birth of a head is considered a birth because it says, Shilya. Let's say we have a circumstance, later on we're going to discuss this, the amniotic sac comes out of the animal. It's born, and there's a sac of fluid that holds the calf inside of the mother, protects it from shock or doesn't bounce around, right? And if that comes out, you can't see inside. So you don't know.
Can the kidney drown through the liquid?
No, because it's attached by an umbilical cord and getting all of its oxygen and nutrients through the mother, right? But they grow up basically, fetuses and things, that's why they don't, otherwise there's not a lot of air inside a mother, right? So it never is going to be able to breathe. So you gets all its oxygen through the mother's blood. So in any event, the sac comes out, you can't tell what part of the animal came out. Could be the head, could be any other part. You have to presume it could have been the head. And therefore, sheyatza miktasa, if part of it comes out, asura ba'achila, you have to presume the head came out, and therefore, if you do shchita on the animal later, you can't eat the calf because maybe the head already came out. So, siman vlad be'isha, kach siman vlad be'behema. So this tells us that the way to know whether something is born is the same thing by a woman as the same thing by an animal, and therefore we know that once the head comes out, it's born. So therefore, why does this Mishnah have to say that? So So fine. So it comes out that if you're going to tell me that the calf sticking its leg out and back makes a difference to whether that leg is going to be permitted to eat or not, so then Tana Seifa Atu Reisha, then it makes sense that the only reason why we're mentioning the head sticking back in is because we're paralleling that case to the first case. And since the first case, the leg sticking out or in makes a difference whether that leg is permitted to eat or not. The second case, the head is irrelevant to mention, but we mention it because of that. Then great, because we already knew that the head is a birth. Ela iamart lo deresha dafka velo deseifa dafka lama le lemisne klau. But if you're going to tell me that it doesn't matter if you stick the leg out at all, because either way the leg is going to be prohibited whether you stick it out or stick it back in, right? It's like the hokey pokey, right? Put your left leg out, you put your left leg in. It doesn't matter anymore. Then the head sticking out and the head sticking back in isn't going to teach me anything either, because we already knew the head sticking out is a full birth. So then why are you mentioning it at all? There's no reason to bring this point up about going out and back in. Just mention that if it sticks its leg out, you can't eat the leg. And if it sticks its head out, you can eat the head. So you can't eat the animal. So the answer is lo. Liola ma'a uber. No, we're going to stick with our guns here. We're talking about the calf. The calf can be eaten, the leg cannot. Ukida Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. And we're going to explain it like Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak explains on a different brisa. Lo nitzrecha ella lemokom chatoch. The reason we need to be able to explain it that if you from the place that you the place that you cut it, hachanami lo nitzrecha ella lemokom chatach. So we are going to say if you cut from the leg, which is by the where it's exiting, right at the point where it exits the animal, right? So it's telling us that part of the animal is permitted if it goes back in. In other words, that section which is right, like the animal sticks its leg out, if you cut it off right there, so then the rest that's still inside the animal right from that point is still acceptable, even though it's already in the birthing canal, it's already on its way out. That still part is fine, so therefore that is the circumstance here as well. Okay, maybe we'll stop here at Toshma. We'll pick up from tomorrow we'll pick up there.
Beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Behema, right?
Yes, Toshma Behema, and if we do